Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. We are looking at a 6-game slate here on Monday to kick off the work week. We got player props in this video. Also got best bets up in another one that we're bringing you both these each and every weekday this season and in the postseason as well. So make sure to subscribe to that page and continue to follow along. Also want you to head to thelines.com. Use that prop finder tool up there to make sure that you're getting the best juice available to you from all these books that are giving us bets this season. And a quick shout out to all the great work from the guys on thelines.com for March Madness right now as we're in those conference tourneys and we're just finishing up those conference tourneys and getting into the big tournaments. So want to make sure you check out all that good stuff as well. Nate, we, like I said, have 6 games to choose from here. A couple of what you might call the duty bowl, including what we're getting here with this first bet with Jalen Duren in the Hornets and Pistons matchup.
Please don't disparage Detroit basketball and Jalen Duren, who I will take to have a double-double in the win, and that's plus 125. If you combine those two, if you can't quite get on board with Detroit to win, even though they are playing an absolute bottom team as well in the Hornets, over 14.5 rebounds and assists gets you the plus money that 11.5 rebounds does not. And honestly, I think he's probably going to cruise to like 14 rebounds in this matchup. So just give me one assist if you want a rebound ladder or whatever. But the thing about Charlotte is they are the worst rebounding team in the league since the All-Star break, and they are shooting the worst on 45% from the floor. So there's tons of rebounding opportunities. Defensively, Nick Richards has played a little bit better, but they're still allowing 14 offensive rebounds per game. That's second most. Josh will tell you he ain't it. Duren coming off an ejection against Dallas, so a little bit of extra rest here. He had 6, 8, and 3 in just 18 minutes, so you can chalk that as an over this prop. If you go just in his home games, he also went over against Brooklyn, then 3 unders against Cleveland and Orlando twice, which, as we always talk about, those are the impossible matchups for a great rebounder. I feel like we just did this with Denny Avdia on Friday, and he definitely got over his rebounds needed against Charlotte. And on the extra rest, a little bit of a boost for Duren, but in wins, in the 10 rare wins for the Detroit Pistons, big numbers for the kid: 18.5, 16 rebounds, 3.8 assists, a 142 offensive rating. So that is the correlation. Obviously, he needs to play well because Detroit does not have too many good players.
No, they don't have too many good players. In full transparency, there's limited props for the games with the good teams in them. So, we've got some look ahead stuff, like for Golden State. I don't even know if you want to call Golden State a good team, dude, but there's some players in there as well. The Spurs would be good if they had the top 10 player in the NBA, Victor Wembanyama. We're not sure about that, but let me stick to this game for a minute here and just talk about Cade Cunningham, because I'm going under for his assists. He is their best player, and he is a good NBA player and might one day be a great one. But right now, I don't think there's much help for him. And I think more importantly, Nate, we just need to give a little bit of credit to Charlotte's defense. As bad as their offense has been, which, by the way, with Vasilije Micic in there, might be a little bit better. He was a big factor in that win over the Brooklyn Nets with 10 dimes and 12 points. Also had like 5 boards to back it up. So our guy has been hooping. But I couldn't quite go with him with his props now as high as they are, and maybe a little bit too high. But Cade Cunningham at 8.5 assists, playing this Charlotte defense. Guess who allows the 9th fewest points per game since the All-Star break? Charlotte. They allow the 9th fewest assists per game since the All-Star break, and they allow the 11th fewest to point guards overall in their last 7 games right now. So, there's some defense being played, not a lot of offense, but there's some defense being played by a team that's also slowed it down a ton, right? We remember them as recently as the LaMelo Ball playing in the first month of the season, going okay, well, they're just going to be like the Washington Wizards and play, at 104 pace because neither of these teams got defense to play. So, but that's not the case anymore. We've seen a little bit of a shift there in that mentality, and that pace is all the way down to 5th slowest in the league. Looking at my good friend Courtside Pal again there, where I love to look at sort of the shot and the profiles of these players and what they do, where they are on the floor. Charlotte is allowing the 5th fewest assists per game to Cade's playmaker profile, right? And that does include him as predominantly the point guard, but he's a bigger point guard as well. This is also taking into consideration his size and his mass. All that kind of stuff comes into play on the Courtside Pal in a way that really gives you an accurate reading of how he's done. 7 of the last 9 point guards to go up against the Charlotte team have gotten under the 8.5 assists. The two that went over, Kyle Lowry in a surprise game there for Philly, and then also looking at Emmanuel Quickly, who went out and got that for them as well. But I'm not expecting Cade to be able to do that with the way that his team also shoots around him, to be honest with you. It's going to have to come around the rim a little bit more. And to your point, I don't really have nice things to say about Nick Richards as an NBA center, although like kudos to him for making it to the NBA as a center. So I can't trash him as a basketball player. I can just say compared to the other dudes in the league, he's got to be a bottom, not a top 30 center. Let's put it that way in the league. Nick Richards, who would not be getting nearly as many minutes if we had Mark Williams in there. But either way, like Duren, who you do like in the double-double, isn't really the guy that we're seeing a lot of Cade's assists off of anyway. He's been throwing them out to the corners a bit more and things of that nature. He's got 13 and a half potential assists in those last 8 since the All-Star break, looking at 7.5 assists per game in that time frame. And even that's a little bit high, or, it's around 55%, almost 60% of his potential assists turning into assists against a team that's had a really good defensive effective field goal percentage. And Detroit has had the worst effective field goal percentage in the league over the course of their last 5 games, still bottom 10 over the course of their last 10. So I'm not really trusting of other guys to make shots, and I don't think you really need to sell out on Cade. If anything, I would take him to score points a bit more rather than worrying about them like just making sure that they get the ball out of his hands really quickly. I don't think that's going to be the game plan from the Charlotte team, who we've seen give up a few more points than we have assists, 2 point guards so far this season and as of late. So that's where I'm looking for Cade.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it gave me pause when researching, trying to get the assists in for Duren. It's just like how good Charlotte has been limiting assists. It's just basically mucking the game up and slowing it down. And yeah, just not allowing point guards to facilitate. I think they're actually like fewest assists to point guards in these last 7. So it does make sense. Yeah, you mentioned the 2 leans here. I mean, I think we both think that Kuminga and Chris Paul are going to have a really nice 2-man game going for the Warriors. So if you want to attack those props as they look to bounce back from the stunning loss to the Wemby-less Spurs, we should see plenty of offense there, especially if Wemby sits. You got to love Kuminga, 21.5 points. But what we do have here is PJ Washington at just over 11.5 points. Very low prop for a guy who has the green light. It's just basically based on these kind of odd rotation decisions lately from Jason Kidd, which is, to pull Gafford and PJ Washington, who the front office is probably like, wait, didn't we just invest a lot in those guys? And isn't Maxi Kleba shooting 23% from 3 and 2.5 points per game? But no, he is splitting time with PJ. But, those guys also were involved in that altercation I mentioned with Duren. And maybe that sparks something a little bit. I mean, either way, PJ was, playing really well. He was averaging 18 points on 20% usage his previous 4 before this 2-game lull. He even had a high usage against Miami, went for 10 and 8, and he's getting the shots up. And that's the thing when you play with Luka Doncic as a power forward, especially. You have a very defined role on offense, which is just be ready to catch and shoot. And PJ has no conscience about this. And the matchup that we're talking about is Chicago, which funnels the most shots out to the 3-point line in the league. It's even up 6 attempts per game since the All-Star break. They're forcing 43 attempts. And sure enough, when the Mavs faced them early in the season, they went 20 for 48 as a team from 3. Luka barely scored. I mean, in his terms, 18 and 10 assists, spraying them out to who? Grant Williams, who went 7 for 9, and THJ also hit 7 threes. So you put PJ in Grant's position. If he hits even 3 of those threes, we're probably looking at an over here. We're looking at a Bulls defense that hasn't had a power forward since Pat Williams went out, is allowing the 6th most points and rebounds to power forward since the break. So he could also get it going down low here. He did go for 26 off the bench the last time he faced Chicago when he was with Charlotte. So matchup seems to be right for him.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's working out for sure. Is PJ Washington in Dallas, but it's just as much about who's not playing. Derek Lively out as well in that one, so there's not quite as much room for J Kidd. We haven't really blasphemed J Kidd in a while, which is good for us for staying away from being petty like that. But I would continue to question his rotations as well. Although with PJ, like I said, with Derek Lively out and Gafford just not getting the run at times coming off the bench that maybe he should. He's much better defensively than is Daniel Gafford, or than is Derek Lively rather. But we still haven't seen him. So either way, I think PJ's the guy that you look at as, like you said, the versatile guy who, if Maxi Kleba isn't going to be able to shoot, then he really brings next to no value for you in terms of playing defense as well. So I think PJ Washington, for the minutes that he's going to see and the volume of shots that he should see as well, is a good bet to get 11.5. I would put this closer to like 13.5 for him. So I think that we're in a good spot to take his over on that one. A guy that is close to the margins on his bet here, as far as the projections that I would have for him, but I still like him to get 22 points, is Nikola Vucevic, who's at 20.5 points. Usually love to take him at 18.5, 19.5 points, but he's been hot as of late. So the books are not going to give us that number anymore, at least until he fails to go over 20.5. But I'm still going to take him to get at least the 21 here. He's gone over this number in 7 of 9 since the All-Star break, averaging 22 because he's scored 22 roughly 6 or 5 of those 7 times that he's gone over this number. So this is where he's living. But the thing that stays consistent on top of the points total at exactly 22 is the shots. If you're in 20 shots a game, like an NBA center who's hitting 57% of his shots this season, taking 20 shots a game, gotta like him to get 21 points, right? Even though Vooch is another guy that I love to trash in terms of a center who just doesn't get to the free throw line. Like, that would drive me bonkers as a coach. If I had he or DeAndre Ayton and I watched them get to the free throw line less than once a game, I'd lose my mind. But the good news is there's nobody down low to guard him on Dallas. Gafford still isn't really surpassing roughly 22, 25 minutes when he gets in there. And he hasn't really helped at all, because since he's gotten there, Dallas is still allowing the 3rd most points per game to centers over their last 7, 5th most overall on the season, which, I mean, they kind of got Gafford for that reason, yet he doesn't get out there to guard the other team's best center. It's just J Kidd once again. I guess that's twice now that I've talked about him after not talking about him for a while. But the like I said, the 20 field goal attempts is what I'm looking at for Vooch over his last 10 games, and especially since the All-Star break, 34.8 minutes per game as well. It's sort of like who else is going to score? If it's not Kobe White and it's not DeMar DeRozan, we don't have anybody that can either finish a shot or create their own shot. And we have seen him able to do that. Dallas is allowing the bottom 5 defensive field goal percentage when it comes to the paint. And really, once you go all the way to the rim as well, although they've been a little bit better directly at the rim since Gafford came along. But with Vooch, enjoying all the success he's had against this Dallas team, he's scored 20 against them twice, or 21 once in the last 4 games, and that included all of those games with Zach LaVine in there, just sort of bogarting roughly like 15, 16 shots per game from him. So now that it's really just like a wide open in terms of like who's scoring from where he is on the floor, there's really nobody else that they trust, especially with Pat Williams, who was taking some of those shots either above the break threes as, the big man who pulls guys from the basket. That is Vooch now, but I also like him to be able to score down around the rim. And when he's able to get really good looks close to the rim as well away from it, that's when I like to go ahead and take him in this matchup.
Old reliable. He is, pretty much somewhere between 15 and 25, you'd expect. And it seems like Kobe White's kind of running out of gas a little bit. I mean, he plays so many minutes right now for the Bulls. He's slowing down a bit. DeRozan has actually struggled in this matchup against Dallas a little bit. I thought 25.5 was a little high for him, and thought about the under there. So, I mean, somebody's going to pick up the slack, because Chicago's going to find a way to be in this game, especially getting points here at home, right? You gotta like Vooch to be part of that, especially if he gets the rook on him more often than not, in terms of Lively.
Yeah, 100%. I had a buddy who is a guy who moves lines, let's say, at times with the way he bets. And he was like, he hit me up as like, am I missing something with Dallas 4.5? I was like, nah, I don't think so. Plus 4.5. I was like, I don't think so. That's too many points. Or they're minus 4.5, obviously. And he was like, okay, he hit it, and the line moved to like 3.5. Hopefully there's still some 4.5s out there when you see it, because I do like Chicago to be able to cover as well in this game. And Vooch should be a big reason for that. So that is all the time we have for you in Play of Props, though. We also have the best bets video up for you, as we do each and every weekday. So continue to follow along, and until we see you next, happy betting.